This story is titled, "You're Not Even Her Real Dad." My stepdaughter screamed at her graduation. Everyone laughed, except me. 3 years later, she showed up at my door. With a baby. So there I was, sitting in the god-awful metal bleachers of Jameson High, melting in a dress shirt that hadn't fit me properly since the Obama administration, watching my stepdaughter cross the stage in a blaze of teenage smugness and borrowed eyeliner. Let me introduce the cast. Me, Dave, 46M. Stepdad, sarcasm enjoyer, part-time car enthusiast, full-time human punching bag. I own a garage, not a metaphorical one. An actual garage. Oil stains, coffee-stained manuals, and one very passive-aggressive intern named Kyle, 19M. Stacy, 44F, my wife. Charming. Sharp. Used to call me her rock. Lately, more like her floor mat. We met at the DMV, which should have been a red flag right there. She cried because her license photo was haunted. I bought her a coffee. 6 years later, she cried again, this time during our wedding vows. Riley, 18F at the time, now 21F, the stepdaughter. Sarcastic. Brilliant. Meaner than a heat wave in denim. I met her when she was 15, already fluent in our roles and emotional warfare. We had moments. She once asked if I knew how to use chopsticks, then said, "Never mind, I forgot you're old." Bonding. Graduation day, the sun was blazing. My lower back was staging a coup, and Riley walked across the stage like she was headlining Coachella. Stacy was sobbing, not cute sobbing. I mean leaking from every hole sobbing. Meanwhile, I was filming the ceremony on my phone like a proud idiot. We made it. For years of therapy-level drama, slam doors, and group texts ending in fine. Whatever. The principal hands Riley her diploma. She turns. Waves. Then the mic picks up her voice, clear, loud, echoing over cheap speakers like a curse from Mount Petty. "Thanks, Mom. And sorry, Dave, you're not even my real dad." Laughter. From the crowd. From the students. From some dickhead in the faculty robe who definitely shouldn't be laughing. I sat there frozen. One arm half raised, still holding the phone. Smile caught mid-birth. People looked at me. Some smirked. One guy clapped like it was a roast. I wanted the earth to open up and swallow me, phone and all. Stacy didn't look at me. Riley was already off stage, hugging her friends like she didn't just drop a verbal nuke on the guy who once drove 6 hours round trip to replace her lost retainer. I drove home alone that night. Not because I wanted to. Because I had to. Stacy texted, "We're going to dinner with her dad." You understand. Her dad. The sperm donor formerly known as Brent, 48M. Who once mailed Riley a birthday card signed, "For me plus my new wife, your future stepmom LOL." And just like that, I wasn't Riley's dad. Not even the fake one. You ever drive home in complete silence? No music. No podcast. Just the sound of your own dignity wheezing in the passenger seat like it took a punch to the throat? That was me. Driving back from Riley's graduation in a shirt I'd sweat through twice, one sock slightly twisted, and a stomach full of nothing because apparently dinner with real dad meant I wasn't even allowed appetizers. The house was too clean when I got back. Like it had been scrubbed free of anything resembling my presence. Stacy had lit one of those fancy candles that smelled like crushed sadness and rosemary. Riley's room was spotless. Her cap and gown already draped on her desk like a trophy. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, looking at a room I helped pay for. A room I repainted after she kicked a hole in the wall during the great iPhone ban of 2019. Nothing in it said thanks, Dave. So I sat on the porch with a beer. Maybe 3. Scrolled through my phone. Rewatched the video I'd taken like some deranged masochist. You're not even my real dad. And that laugh. That goddamn laugh that ripped the last 3 years out of me like they were a bad appendix. The next morning, Stacy got home around 10. I was still on the couch, smelling like dried sweat and half-hearted resentment. She kissed my forehead like I was a dog who needed calming down. She didn't mean it, she said, putting her purse down like this wasn't DEFCON 5. She was just emotional. You know how Riley gets. Right. Emotional. Like a viper on Red Bull. She embarrassed me, I said. In front of hundreds of people. She was joking, she insisted, flipping through the mail. Don't make this bigger than it is. And that's when I realized something that hit harder than her words ever did. Stacy was used to it. The chaos. The disrespect. The burn it all down and laugh about it Riley tornado. And somewhere along the way, I just become another piece of furniture to her, useful, solid, and easy to ignore. You know she wouldn't even have a graduation if it weren't for you, right? I said. Who paid for summer school last year when she failed trig? Who drove her to every college tour while Brent sent selfies from Coachella? She didn't answer, just sighed and said, "This is what parenting is, Dave." No, I said, standing up. This is what parenting isn't. You don't get to rip someone apart and call it bonding. Stacy flinched. Just for a second. That night, we didn't talk. She went to bed early. I stayed in the garage, pretending to work on the Mustang I'll probably die before finishing. And for the first time since I met Riley, I didn't feel like her dad. I felt like the exit plan. You ever notice how quickly a house stops feeling like home when people stop pretending they like you? Week after graduation, I started fading from the picture like some kind of stepdad ghost. Riley was off celebrating with her real family, a phrase I heard way too often for someone who once paid to get her braces removed early because she couldn't handle another picture with metal mouth. Stacy didn't say it, but she said it. You know? Fewer texts. More silence. Fewer good mornings. More "can you grab milk?" vibes. It was like the whole house got the memo that I was being phased out. Even the houseplant stopped trying. The fiddle leaf in the corner started dropping leaves like it had given up on this toxic family dynamic, too. I started sleeping in the guest room. Not officially, of course. We didn't have the conversation. But one night, I stayed up too late watching reruns and figured, screw it. Next night, Stacy didn't ask why. By the fourth night, she was making the bed in there like it was part of the rotation. It was quiet. Cold. Smelled like dust and resentment. My kind of place, apparently. Meanwhile, Brent was suddenly back in the picture. Posting TikToks with Riley in matching outfits. Calling her my twin in captions like he hadn't missed 3 birthdays and once told me, dead serious, that alimony was government bullying. One day I walked in from the garage to find Stacy on the phone, laughing. That light, flirty laugh I hadn't heard in months. I stopped in the doorway. She turned her back like I was the *****ing landlord doing a spot inspection. When she hung up, I asked, "Was that Brent?" She blinked. "No." "Cool." That night, I checked our joint bank account, and yeah, of course, a deposit to Riley. From Stacy, labeled for dorms. The same dorm deposit I'd offered to cover. The one Stacy said, "Don't worry about it, we'll split it later." Except she'd already paid it. With our money. Without telling me. I sat down in the kitchen, stared at the table we bought together at IKEA 4 years ago. I remembered us arguing about whether we needed the matching chairs. She said yes. I said she'd never use them. She used them. For game nights. Family dinners. Her friends. Not me. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not because I was angry. Because I was tired. And because I realized I'd spent years giving my all to people who kept me just close enough to use, but not enough to count. I left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Fix the leaky faucet before it gets worse." That was it. No drama. No screaming. Just a faucet. And a man tired of pretending the house was still his. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I walked out of that house, tossed the keys in the planter, and swore off family holidays, group chats, and being called Dave, like I was just the guy who fixed stuff and paid for Wi-Fi. I rebuilt. Slowly. Like one of those DIY YouTubers who make entire cabins with a spoon and trauma. Rented a small place across town. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Enough space for my stubborn peace and the occasional date that didn't end in therapy talk. Started running the garage full-time. Hired real help. Even got a cat. Her name's Muffin. She's allergic to everything. Hates eye contact. And somehow still makes me feel more appreciated than my ex-wife and stepdaughter ever did. I hadn't spoken to either of them since the divorce. Not a word. Not a Christmas card. Not even a drive-by middle finger. So when the doorbell rang that Tuesday morning, I wasn't expecting anything except maybe Amazon or Kyle forgetting his shift again. But there she was. Riley, 21F. Standing on my porch. Face pale. Eyes red. Hair in a messy bun. And in her arms? A baby. Not a toddler. Not a bundle wrapped in a cartoon blanket. A newborn. "Hi," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I blinked. I actually thought, maybe I'm hallucinating. Maybe I finally snapped, and this is how my brain says goodbye. But nope. It was her. Riley, who once told me I was just the guy who fixed light bulbs. Riley, who let a stadium full of strangers laugh while she tore my heart out and called it a graduation speech. She looked exactly how I felt after the divorce, like the world had chewed her up and left teeth marks. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. My stomach flipped. Muffin bolted under the couch like she felt the storm, too. I said nothing. Just stepped aside. Let her in. The house instantly shrank. Her perfume, faint, familiar, wrapped around the walls like a memory I didn't ask for. She sat on the couch, clutching the baby like it was both anchor and excuse. His name was Theo. She whispered it like it hurt to say. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said quickly. I don't know. I didn't know where else to go. Brent's gone. Mom moved to Arizona. I thought about calling, but I figured you'd slam the door. I almost did, I said. She smiled. It cracked at the edges. We sat in silence. Her and the baby, me and 1,000 ghosts, all of us trying to figure out if this was a visit or the start of something we never really finished. Theo stared at me like he was trying to figure out if I was safe or just another person who'd vanish mid-diaper change. Smart kid. Great instincts. He was swaddled like a burrito, cheeks puffed out like he was storing acorns, and making these tiny sounds that felt louder than Riley's apology, which still hadn't come. She sat there like the couch was a lifeboat and she didn't know how to swim. I didn't expect you to let me in, she said again. After everything. Yeah, I said. Neither did I. We just sat there. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, more like a ticking bomb wrapped in a warm blanket. She looked tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones. Not just from the baby. From something older. Deeper. That same look I saw in the mirror the day I signed my divorce papers in a strip mall lawyer's office next to a vape shop. I asked the obvious. Where's Brent? She snorted. Gone. Surprise, right? Not really. Apparently, Captain Coachella couldn't handle colic and responsibility. Last I heard, he was living in an RV behind a gym in Tucson, still posting shirtless selfies and pretending to be an entrepreneur. And your mom? Riley laughed, but it came out broken. She blocked me. Said I made my bed and now I have to sleep in it. Damn. Even I didn't think Stacy would throw her own daughter to the wolves. Yes, the Applebee's wine club finally took priority over basic human decency. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee, brought it back with 2 mugs and some Oreos because I still don't know how to feed people properly. Riley stared at them like they were an artifact from a former life. You used to bring these after my tantrums, she said quietly. Remember? I nodded. You never ate them. You just threw them at the wall. Yeah, I was awful. She didn't say it looking for pity. She said it like a fact. Like she finally read the Yelp reviews of her teenage self and went, wow, that was a 1-star performance. And then she said it. The thing I never thought I'd hear. I'm sorry, Dave. Her voice cracked on my name. My name. Not Dad. Not Stepdad. Not Hey You. Just Dave. It hurt and healed at the same time. Like disinfectant. Sharp. Necessary. She looked down at Theo. He doesn't have anyone. And I know I'm asking for too much just by being here, but you were the only person who ever stayed. Even when I pushed you so hard I wanted you to leave. I didn't say anything. Just picked up Theo. Held him against my chest. He didn't cry. Neither did I. But something cracked open. Something old. And maybe something new. It was almost peaceful for a minute. Theo asleep on my chest. Riley sipping cold coffee like she hadn't just dropped her entire broken life on my welcome mat. The cat even came out, sniffed the baby's foot like it was a new species, then promptly judged all of us and walked off. And then she said it. Like a spark in a gas station. There's something else. Of course there is. Okay, I said, calm, cautious. Like a man who's seen his emotional Jenga tower wobble before. Riley pulled something from her bag. A manila envelope, thick with dread. She held it like it burned. I wasn't going to tell you, she said. But I figured, if I was going to ask for help, I had to tell you everything. That's never a sentence you want to hear. Ever. She slid the envelope across the table like we were in some undercover sting. I opened it slowly, half expecting divorce papers, or worse, a Father's Day card with Brent's face on it. But no. Inside were hospital bills. Lots of them. Stacked, unpaid, some final notices. A few in bold red font that practically screamed, you're screwed. And under those? Legal documents. Court filings. Custody warnings. And one line that made my stomach fall through the floorboards. Child Protective Services will review case due to absence of stable guardian. I looked at her. Really looked. The dark circles. The trembling hand. The fact that she hadn't blinked since I opened the envelope. You're about to lose him, I said. She nodded, slowly. Like each movement hurt. I tried, she whispered. I swear I did. I worked 2 jobs. I begged Mom for help. Brent said he'd step up, but he stepped out. I said, bitter and sharp. She winced, but didn't argue. I thought I had more time. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. But last week, he got sick. Really sick. I didn't have insurance. I had to take him to the ER, and when they saw the address listed as a friend's couch and realized I didn't have any paperwork in order, she trailed off. They flagged it. Tears welled up. I thought they'd take him right there in the ER. Some woman came in with a clipboard and started asking questions, and I panicked. I lied. Said I was staying with my father. That he was helping. That it was your address. I blinked. You gave them my name? I didn't know what else to do. I stood stepped back from the table like it had turned radioactive. You lied to the state. Used my name. Dragged me into this without asking. You could have screwed me, Riley. I know, she said, voice breaking. But I didn't know where else to go. And I figured if anyone was strong enough to fix this. She looked at me like she used to look at her mom after breaking a vase. Desperate, guilty, hopeful. You were the only dad I ever had. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal hotlines, coffee, and a baby who treated sleep like an optional side quest. Theo had the kind of cry that felt like it peeled paint off the walls. Not whiny, not fussy, desperate. The kind of sound that made you picture flashing red lights and people in scrubs. I didn't say it to Riley, but the kid wasn't just sick. He was scared. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured CPS knocking on my door this time. Not hers. Mine. Because thanks to her brilliant lie, I was now the emergency contact, the supposed legal guardian, the guy whose name was on a bunch of forged forms in some godforsaken government office. If they decided to dig, I was toast. Career, house, everything I'd built in the last 3 years, gone like Stacy's loyalty. So yeah, I should have kicked her out. Should have told her to go find Brent and let him charm some judge with his tank top and fake business cards. Instead, I called a lawyer. Again, her name was Nina, 37F, and she was exactly the kind of terrifying you want on your side. Think silk blouse, sharp eyeliner, and a brain that could disassemble you like IKEA furniture. I told her everything. No sugar, no spin, just the raw, ugly truth about a man who gave everything to a kid that once laughed while stabbing him in the back, and who is now back, holding a baby and begging for one more miracle. After reading the file, Nina leaned back, folded her arms, and asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you even want to help her? I stared at the table. My hands. The scars on my knuckles from the garage. Every line in my palm felt like a map I couldn't read. No, I said. Not her. Pause. But the kid? Yeah, I want to help him. She nodded. Then we need to make this legal. Fast. The next morning, I found Riley asleep on the couch, Theo curled on her chest like a living paperweight. For a second, I saw it. The scared kid behind the scar tissue. Not the brat from high school. Not the girl who gutted me at graduation. Just someone trying, and failing, to survive. I sat down, laid out the papers Nina sent over. Custodial emergency authorization. Temporary guardianship. Financial responsibility disclosures. If I sign these, I said, I'm in. And if anything goes sideways, I go down with you. Riley sat up slowly, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. She didn't say anything. So I picked up the pen, and I signed. Not because she deserved it, because he did. And in that moment, I wasn't a stepdad, or a placeholder, or a broken man with a garage full of what-ifs. I was his, and no one, not even her, was taking him away from me. It happened 6 weeks later. We were in the pediatrician's office, surrounded by coughs, crying, and waiting room chairs that were somehow both plastic and judgmental. Theo had a mild ear infection, nothing serious, but he was clinging to me like I was the last life raft in a sea of pokey instruments and bright lights. Riley was filling out forms with her usual air of panic meets pride, and I was holding Theo like he'd always belonged there. In my arms. In my life. Then the nurse called out, "Dad." I stood. Automatically. Didn't even think. Just rose to my feet with Theo on my hip, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to. The nurse smiled. "This way, Dad." And Riley looked up from the clipboard, met my eyes, and didn't say a word. She didn't correct her. Didn't flinch. Didn't crack some bitter joke or roll her eyes like she used to. She just watched. Later that night, after Theo was asleep and the house finally stopped humming with baby chaos, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same one I'd eaten Oreos at alone 3 years ago, and pulled something from her bag. An envelope. Another one. This time, it was thin, neat, clean. Inside was a letter. No stamps. No address. Just my name at the top in shaky handwriting. "I wrote this the week after graduation," she said, "but I never gave it to you." I unfolded it. Read. "Dave, I'm sorry I embarrassed you. I didn't mean to. I was angry. I felt like you were trying too hard to be my dad, and I didn't want one. Not then. But you were always there. Always. When I crashed the car. When I lost my scholarship. When Brent didn't show. It was always you. I said the worst thing I could think of because I wanted to push you away before you gave up on me. I didn't know you never would. I don't deserve another chance. But if you ever let me back in, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." I looked up. She was crying. Silently. Like it wasn't new to her. "I didn't come back because I needed you," she whispered. I came back because Theo needed the only man I ever trusted to stay. And that was it. That was the moment the last piece clicked into place. Not just for her. For me. Because I realized I hadn't signed those papers out of guilt or old love or some dusty sense of duty. I did it because deep down, I never stopped being her dad. The next morning, I was changing Theo's diaper with the efficiency of a man who once rebuilt a carburetor in the dark, and he looked at me, blinked, reached out, tiny hand, tight grip. Then he said it. Duh. Just that. One syllable. Half-formed. Sloppy. But it shattered me, because I knew what he meant. And for once in my life, I didn't need a diploma, a marriage certificate, or anyone's permission to feel like I mattered. I was his dad, and that was real.